健全なる魂は、健全なる精神と、健全なる肉体に宿る。Welcome everyone, I'm at the Hero and today, assuming the video won't get taken down for 5 seconds of resonance, we'll be talking about Beck and Bamco's fighting game, Soul Eater Battle Resonance. The game was developed by Beck and published by the owner of all anime games publishing rights always and forever, Bandai Namco, for the PlayStation 2 and PSP in January of 2009. This game, being a fighting game, features no set protagonist, but does feature a more involved story mode than your just regular arcade romp. You start the game out with just the main trio of teams, Soul and Maka, Kid and the Thompson sisters, Blackstar and Tsubaki, and get to choose one to go through the first 24 episodes of the anime with. On your journey, you'll have some fights, have more challenge fights, and have even more talking. Look, I'm not saying that tutorialization is a bad thing, you need to let me know how the game functions, but do we really need a tutorial mission some 4 missions before the last one? What does it say about your game design that there's like 5 entire functions to the gameplay and you won't let go of my hand for 1 second? But I digress. As you finish story mode with more teams, the more teams you unlock to go through the story mode with. Though I hope you're not a big enough dumbass to be a fan of Excalibur or Shinigami-sama because they require the entire cast to finish the story mode to unlock. Well, alright, but how's the gameplay? Fighting games live or die by the gameplay, right? Overly reductionist statements aside, well... Soul Eater Battle Resonance is left in quite an unenviable spot, as it was made before modern arena fighters were born, or hardware that is not associated with their sort for the most part either. I mean, I don't think the PS2 or the PSP would have been incapable, but all signs point towards this being a budget title with an approximate budget of 1 afternoon's warm meal and some headpads, so I don't think Beck were too keen on reinventing the wheel just for this game. All of that is to say that Battle Resonance is weird. It's more a Bleach Heat the Soul than an Ultimate Ninja Storm, and it's especially not a traditional fighting game like Street Fighter. It's that subgenre we've yet to bestow with a name that existed before the PS360 era of anime fighting games, the one the Ultimate Ninja series became as they started metamorphizing into Ultimate Ninja Storm. The one most Bleach fighting games after Blade Battlers are like the sole representative of, and if you want to cast the net wide, then the subgenre that looked at the Budokai games and went, okay, what if we kept some of the traditional FG DNA but simplified even further? So listen to this. There's no crouching. Okay, yeah, well, Fantasy Strike does that too. Sure it does, but that was an explicit attempt at lessening the mental stack on newer players. A misguided attempt among a list of them that leave the game missing parts, rendering it only a GAM, arguably less, but I digress. No crouching is weird already if you've spent more than a second with any fighting game, especially since this means that some characters will have sweeps, or rather, moves that look like sweeps, while others will not. But then to add to this, there's the way they decided to implement attacks. As is with most anime fighting game that is a precursor to modern arena fighters, you have a string on one button that you can mash to your heart's content, but unlike them, you don't get various strings by using modifiers like up or down. In fact, that's where the control similarities sort of end, because they took the system mechanics in a weird direction. The easiest way to understand all this is by looking at the bars. As you can see, it builds out from the middle towards souls, so what does all that mean? Well, your characters have dedicated master and weapon attack buttons, as well as a special attack button that doubles as an instant super button. Each time you land an attack with one of those buttons, their respective bar builds, and once they reach full, nothing happens. Well, if it's just one of them. For you see, this isn't a meter of psychic power or how pissed off your character is, but it's a meter gauging just how in sync your character's souls are. Don't ask me how that works when it's just one guy you're playing as though. Either way, once both ends of the bar are filled up, you can either be stupid and spend it on a super, or alternatively, sucker the enemy in and do a Soul Resonance to Wish Punish, making your meter grow while retaining the previous level. Soul Resonance works like a burst, except it also deals damage and can be safely activated on reaction against the majority of the casts, so they're roughly speaking just flat out better than in most games. Not to mention that playing regularly, you can get 2 of them per round, though that comes with the caveat that once you reach level 3 with your meter, you can no longer burst. But then we get to one of the biggest problems of the combat design, a point of the triangle that makes the game less than I wish it was. You see, level 3 super arts are moves that don't just remove some 70-75% of the enemy's health bar. Not only do they have invincibility on startup, but they can also be charged by pressing 4. Sure, that's just a basic universal mechanic whenever, but when you put it all together, it makes for a very strong option. And the only two reasons it doesn't completely break the game is that they can only be activated in a point-blank range and that they're blockable. That being said though, Soul Eater Battle Resonance is already a really defensive game thanks to a neat universal mechanic I'll touch on shortly, as well as the game feel which we'll get to eventually. As you'd imagine, the threat of the invincible startup insta-nuke doesn't make the game any less defensive once people's level 3 bars come online, which might I add is quite fast in most cases. The neat mechanic I made note of just now though is a very interesting decision both in idea and in the way it was executed, though it only adds to the game's defensiveness. You see, one of the game's universal mechanics is the addition of what my friends and I refer to as geese parries, after the man who popularized them. What separates geese parries from parries you'll find more frequently in fighting games is that, well, for one, they're usually not universal, and only exist to show a character has complete mastery of their martial arts and is a piece of shit. But more importantly, from a gameplay standpoint, they feature a built-in retaliation which the likes of the universal melee mechanics on Third Strike don't. The reason geese parries don't work quite as well in the game's favor though are the other 2 points of the game's triangle of suck I've noted earlier, these being the sheer amount of invincibility frames on everything really, but mainly on wake up, and the way movement feels. The invincibility frames themselves may be self-explanatory. They want to remove Okies, so there's less chances of newbies getting vortexed to death by their cracked out aggressive CPU. But there's a weird rock paper scissors laser Spock dichotomy that arises from it. Because you can't be attacked for the entire fiscal year upon being hit with a hard knockdown. If you attack after wake up, they can parry and get you with that, but wake up attacks beat parries and in fact are unbeatable by anything that isn't just not being there. Now you may think this means just stay away from knockdown enemies and then hit them with a jumping attack or some other advancing move. Except advancing moves seldom exist in this game, and air attacks, like most anything else, are janky because of the movement. Now, the movement. It's not really the movement that's the problem here, but the general game feel. But game feel is a very nebulous concept that is hard to put into words and can be very subjective. Nonetheless, allow me to make an attempt to describe Battle Resonance's game feel. Ahem. Going hither and thither feels fine. Not the most responsive, but both characters move reasonably fast within their own context, and it's okay. Jumping, if directed, may not come out, and jumping attacks even less so, but neutral jumps work fine. Attacks of any sort on the ground use a system that is transcendent of this mortal coil. It is not a dial a combo, it's dial the local McDonald's so that I can tell the cashier what moves I want done. Levels are responsive. All except the geese parries, which, while still having startup, are pretty fast relative to the game, but honestly that inconsistency is what kills it for me, not the rest. If the entire game felt like wading through molasses, the game would suck, but at least it would suck consistently. If everything was snappy within reason, the game would feel really good, but as it is, it kinda just sucks and is confusing as well. But enough of the meat and potatoes. Okay, pressing buttons could be better, but what can you even do? Well, the game features the aforementioned adventure mode, as well as an arcade mode, and free battle, which is your regular versus CPU options, and team battle, which works like KOF. Outside of battling, you can also visit the voice settings to make characters say different lines during attacks, or go to the Soul Eater to view all of your favorite episodes as long as they're not after episode 24, cut up into 4 images with no dialogue. To move on to the presentation though, the game features graphics that are adequate for the time and expectations, I'd say. It doesn't quite look like the show, but it is trying its damnedest to do so within the hardware and potential budget limitations. The music on the other hand, while also having some tells that the devs didn't receive the highest of budgets, namely using obviously MIDI instruments in contexts where it makes their inclusion feel more so out of necessity than artistic intent, really do their best to capture the spirit of the anime and is one of the highlights of the game in just how they feel natural to the IP. One major decision they made in the presentation is to have the game running on artificial widescreen by pulling the camera out and adding black bars above and below, which I suppose made more sense at the time. The PSP was a widescreen console, the PS2 generally wasn't, but was capable. It does however come with the funny side effect that if you have a PS2 that makes the game run in widescreen like I do, well, the elements artificially changing the aspect ratio remains, so I hope you've been enjoying whatever weirdo anamorphic pixel aspect ratio the game runs in. But all in all, I enjoy Soul Eater Battle Resonance. I know it might not have seemed like that, considering I spent the better part of this review trashing it, but I still like Soul Eater as an IP. It's one of those where it feels synthesized in a lab just to appeal to me. And the game still has some interesting ideas, even if they usually leave things to be desired in execution, probably due to circumstance. The problem is that I just wouldn't feel right making a glowing review for something like this because I know I can put up with it and have fun, but could I really recommend this to anyone who isn't already emotionally invested in the IP? And the answer to that is no. There's better fighting games out there. There's better licensed fighting games out there. Hell, there's probably better Soul Eater games out there, or at least I hope. One of the other two has to be unequivocally good, right? But I digress. It is far from the worst fighting game I've played. It definitely has its charms. But that leaves the question, should you spend time with Soul Calibur Battle Resonance? Well, if you're a fan of the IP or a fighting game fan willing to put up with some real jank to see some interesting ideas imperfectly executed, then maybe, but I'd still be wary. With both of those befit you, however, you might actually end up liking the game like I have. And remember, your soul is mine.